shirt dress man.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to church. Welcome to the gospel according to Duck Dynasty. For those of you who don't know, Duck Dynasty is a reality television show on A&E that follows the antics of a group of Louisiana rednecks who run a multi-million-dollar duck call business. For those of you who don't know what a duck call is, it's a thing that you call ducks with. Clues in the name, really. More specifically, it's a thing you call ducks with just before you shoot them. Now, I first heard about Duck Dynasty at a wedding I did back in 2012. I was talking with a friend of the bride who told me that she was planning to leave the reception early so that she could rush home and watch the latest episode of Duck Dynasty. At this point I said, "What's Duck Dynasty?" And she told me exactly that. It's a show about a group of Louisiana rednecks who run a multi-million-dollar duck call business. And then her eyes widened and her mouth opened as though she expected me to say something affirming. don't remember exactly what I said, but I do remember it wasn't all that affirming. I think that the words that came out of my mouth were a combination of wasteland, cultural, brain, yours, and is. Then a few months later, I walked into a friend's home and I caught him watching an episode of Duck Dynasty. Now, catching your friend watching an episode of this show is catching your friend in the middle of a guilty pleasure. It's in the same league as picking up your friend's iPod and discovering it's full of Justin Bieber. Do you know what I mean? And so I said to him, hey, come on, really, you're watching Duck Dynasty, what's wrong with you? And he said, no, it's cool, come on, sit down, it's funny, you'll enjoy it, come on. And I did, and I got hooked. You can't hide class for long. That's the moral of this story. And so did millions of other people. Duck Dynasty is the most popular non-fiction show in the history of cable television. There are 3 books written by Duck Dynasty cast members currently in the New York Times bestseller list, and most tellingly of all, you can buy Duck Dynasty t-shirts in Walmart, which is the ultimate sign of cultural penetration. Duck Dynasty is everywhere. So for the next 4 weeks, I want to talk with you about some of the Christian values that are present in the show, and I want to relate those values back to the Bible, and then from the Bible forward into our 21st century lives. The Robertson family are Christians. They believe in Jesus, they go to a church, they say their prayers, they read their Bible, and the thing that fascinates me about them and their story is that they're Christians, but they're not dicks about it. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do you ever meet people who are religious, but in a slightly annoying way?
Yes.
And they're not fun to be around, and there's something slightly horrible, slightly unpleasant about their whole religious personality thing. Well, I think that part of the appeal of Duck Dynasty is that the Robertson family have found a way of being religious without being all that religious. So in their world, it's okay to be into Jesus and to also spend 15 minutes arguing about whose farts smell the worst. That's okay. In their world, it's okay to read the Bible and try and understand what it means, and to also skive off work for an afternoon so that you can participate in a donut eating contest. Speaking of skiving off work for the afternoon and moving ever so smoothly, and I think quite professionally, into this morning's subject matter, in the world of Duck Dynasty, there always seems to be plenty of time for fun. Those of you who watch the show, have you noticed this? The show takes place in a small town called West Monroe, Louisiana. And when you watch the show, you get the impression that time works slightly differently down there, because down there they seem to have a lot more time for enjoyment and pleasure than we do in the busy rat race of the GTA. This is Jace Robertson. He's the head of the manufacturing department where the duck calls are made. Only when you watch the show, you notice there's never all that much manufacturing actually going on, because Jace and the rest of the crew are always finding rather creative ways not to work. Here's one of my favourite quotes from Jace. He says, "If you're too busy to hunt, then you're too busy." Now, I don't hunt, but I do like the idea of always having time to do the things that I enjoy doing, which of course I don't. What's the one thing we always say we never have enough of and are always running out of? Time. In our busy lives, we're already overstretched. We can barely cope with the commitments that we already have. And yet we feel this constant pressure to push ourselves farther, to make ourselves busier, to take ourselves to the limits of our capacity and our family's capacity to cope. And one of the results of all this running around is that we've turned time into a commodity. We'll gladly spend money on anything that promises to get it done faster, quicker, and more efficiently. Our homes are full of devices that promise to make our lives easier, are they not? We have microwaves that promise to save us cooking time. We have machines that promise to save us washing time. We have automatic garage door openers that save us that precious 60 seconds we'd otherwise have to spend getting out of the car ourselves and opening the door manually. And we have people to help us too. We have people to help us with our housework. We have people to help us with our children. We have people to help us with our gardening. And yet, in spite of all the time-saving devices and services that we've purchased, still the most common complaint of our life is that we have no time. Get this. All over North America, people flood into restaurants, the signage of which does not promise good food. All over this continent, people flood into eateries where the food that's promised isn't good, but fast. We don't care if it's disgusting as long as we don't have to wait for it. We don't care if it's not well made and if it's terribly unhealthy as long as we get it quickly. Why is it that when we're driving, we constantly gauge which lane is moving the fastest? So that we can make a decision which lane to be in, so that we can get where we're going 45 seconds earlier than we otherwise would. Who are we that we need those 45 seconds? Why is it that when we're in the grocery store, we make these subconscious decisions about which lane is moving the quickest? Why do we get so freaked out when we're in Walmart? And I know they've got 22 lanes and there's only one open on a Friday night. Why does that make us so angry, though? We're standing here in the queues. And I do as well. It's disgrace. It's against our human rights. That's what it is. See those people suffering in North Korea? They don't know the problems we've got. Nothing. 5 minutes. Who are we? Why is it that when we have 19 items in our basket, we'll divide that into 2 baskets so we can use the That's not just me, right? You know that. And you know that you've got a bad dose of the busy disease when you're listening to someone talking and you start to nod your head faster in the hope that that will make them finish faster. Doesn't work with sermons. But this is life in the Greater Toronto area, and here's the awkward question that this morning's dip into the Bible is going to ask all of us. How much damage is happening in your life and in the lives of those you love because you have no time? Running too fast, juggling too many commitments, doing too many things. What damage is that causing? This morning I want to read you from my favourite part of the Bible. It comes from the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, from a part called the Book of Ecclesiastes. It's a poem. It's a famous poem. You've almost certainly heard it before. The poem is billed as the observations of an older, wiser man. And here's what he says. He says, "There is an opportune time to do things, a right time for everything on the earth. A right time for birth and another for death. A right time to plant and another to reap. A right time to kill and another to heal. A right time to destroy and another to construct. A right time to cry and another to laugh. A right time to lament and another to cheer. A right time to make love and another to abstain. a right time to embrace and another to part, a right time to search and another to count your losses, a right time to hold on and another to let go, a right time to rip out and another to mend, a right time to shut up and another to speak up, a right time to love and another to hate, a right time to wage war and another to make peace. So what this ancient wisdom in the Bible is saying is that God has designed life in a particular way, and that way involves there being a time for things. The wisdom of God says that we need time to make the most of all that this beautiful life involves, and therefore life works best when we have time. And if then the most common complaint of your life and mine is that we have no time, then that would suggest very loudly and very clearly you and I have a problem. And if you're like me, you'll say that out of a curious mix of pride and exasperation. On the one hand, we proudly complain about how busy we are and how we're running around chasing our tails and juggling all these commitments and burning the candle at both ends and hatching new plans and devising new schemes and multitasking and all that. And the reason that we run so fast and push ourselves in that way is because there's a subconscious theme in our culture that says the faster we're running and the busier we are and the more we're doing, the more important we are. We might complain about how busy our lives are, but the truth is we like being busy. We need to feel busy because we perversely equate busyness in life with meaning in life. However, on the other hand, at the same time that we proudly confess to living life in the fast lane, we also know there's a price to be paid for how busy we are. We know that we complain about having no time, that our spouse is suffering, that our children are suffering, that our health is suffering, that we've got no time for meaningful friendships, no time for interesting pursuits that will enrich us rather than diminish us. We know secretly that this busy life we're living is sucking the life out of us. And you won't like what I'm about to say, but you will recognize the truth of it. If the life that you're living is exacting too heavy a toll from you and from your family, you have no one to blame but yourself. The truth is that those of us who say we have no time know full well that the reason we're so overstretched all the time is because we've made continual decisions that have caused us to stay busy. Have a look at this simple wisdom from the Bible. It looks like it could have been written by Uncle Si, but God made man simple. Some more simple than others, you have to say. But man's complex problems are of his own devising. And when I read that this week, I thought, oh my goodness, that's just me to a T and you to a T. That's just so true. I've cluttered up my own life, and so have you, with hassles of my own making. And when I'm brave enough to stop and think about my life, as I hope you are, I wonder whether or not how fast I can keep running, and how far I can keep pushing myself, and how many more commitments I can keep juggling. At what point do we realize that this life we're creating for ourselves is slowly killing us? Think about this. What experience of enduring value can occur at a very high rate of speed? What meaningful stuff in your life can happen at 100 miles an hour. A few years ago I was, please come on in, sit down. If you sit here, this is the spit zone though, so I wouldn't go there. Also the bad breath zone, so it's kind of two for the price of one. A few years ago I was driving through Algonquin Park, and I wasn't going anywhere in particular, but I had to get there in a hurry. You know how it is? And just off to the side of the road I saw a moose. And I was with the kids at the time, so I pulled over by the side of the road, like you do, and spent 5 minutes of my life looking at the moose. And it was just one of those parent-child occasions that sticks with you. I think I'll remember it for as long as I live. It was just nice watching my children be so enthralled by this Canadian scene, by this natural stuff. I liked it, and here's the thing, at 100 kilometers an hour, such an experience would have been impossible. So, let me ask you again, what experience of enduring value can occur in your life at the high rate of speed at which you're currently living? Can you experience real intimacy and closeness if you're running too fast, juggling too many things? Can you experience meaningful friendships that will enrich your life if you're running too fast, juggling too many things? If you're living life at 100 miles an hour, busy, 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 go, 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 got to get to the next thing, got to get to the next thing, do you have time to find out what's going on in the heart, in the heart of your kids? Can you investigate the meaningful things, the spiritual things, the things that will make your life deeper and more enriched if you're going at the pace you're going? But all of us know that the answer to those questions is no. Do you know why we work so hard, push ourselves so far and so fast? I think it's because beyond the need to pay the bills, I think for many of us it's because when you peel back life, and if you're forced to stop and think about this thing, it's then you realize that it is actually pretty meaningless, pretty boring. Look at what the same wise man wrote in the Bible. Looking back at his life at the end, he said, "I denied myself nothing that my eyes desired." So that sounds like a nice lifestyle to me. I fancy that, I'm having it. I fancy them, I'm having it. I fancy that product, I think I'll buy it. Everything I saw, I had it. Nice. I refused my heart no pleasure. There was no boundary between fantasy and reality for me. Sounds all right. My heart also took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for my labor. In other words, I worked hard all my life, and I was successful. I made it, and having made it, I was able to enjoy all sorts of stuff, all sorts of things. It was great. Happy, happy, happy. That was me. Happy, happy, happy. I made it. It was fantastic. Yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done and all that I had toiled to achieve, in that moment I saw it for what it was. Meaningless. Just a chasing after the wind. Now the wind is real. The wind is there. But difficult to get your hands on. The wisdom of Ecclesiastes is therefore essentially a depressing wisdom. It basically says, you know what, you should work hard. You should love your wife, you should love your life, you should enjoy all the stuff you can while you're young and while you're able. It's your, as Phil Robertson would say, your God-given right to pursue those things. It's good to be happy, and it's right to pursue happiness and do everything you can to make your life and the lives of your family happy. Pleasure is good. Pleasure is a God thing. It's fantastic. Do all that. But do it all knowing that it is essentially quite meaningless. Jesus, who was raised on the same ancient wisdom, said this. He wasn't really asking a question, more of a statement. He said, "What good is it for a person to gain the whole world and yet in the gaining of it lose his very self? How many people do you know who are working hard, busy, 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 go, 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 to get the things that this culture says are important, and yet in the very process of getting it all, are missing out on life? They're losing something of their essential humanity. What good is it doing you to work harder? What good is it doing you to have more and get the latest and have the fastest? Where is it getting you frantically running around with your kids into this program and that program and the next program? Where's the benefit in you juggling even more commitments, trying to gain the world, however you define that? What do you gain when you get it? Or if you get a little bit nearer to gaining it this year than you did last year? What's the point? If in the course of all that, you become unresponsive to life, love, family, and friends, beauty, and even God himself, what's it worth? There's a saying in the Highlands of Scotland. Before I tell you the saying, I'll show you a scene from yes, there we are. This is where I'm from. That little road there is the road to my hometown. It's not normally like that. It's normally raining. It's the right Scottish weather outside today. I often wonder as a Bible scholar how the Noah story would have worked in Scotland. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to have seen that. Hello, my name is Noah. I have a message. What is it? It's going to rain for 40 days. Mate, we're already on day 55, so no big deal. Anyway, where I come from, in the Highlands, we take a dim view. It's part of our culture. We take a dim view of land ownership. In my culture, you can buy land, but you can never own land. In fact, in the Highlands of Scotland, there's no such thing as trespassing. You cannot have one of those silly signs we have here in Ontario, private property, no trespassing. I will walk wherever I like. You may have bought this, but you don't own it. That's our culture. Anyway, here's the saying. Who owns the hill? Who owns the field? Who owns the moor? Is it the banker in London who worked hard to buy it? Or is it the poacher staggering home in the morning with a deer on his back? Do you understand the saying? Do you understand it by looking at this image? In this moment in time, who owns this land? Is it the rich guy living somewhere who made millions and who was able to buy it? Or is it this ordinary couple who are walking upon it and enjoying it and appreciating its beauty? Jesus said, "Take heed, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And yet the powerful lure in our culture, the powerful lie in our culture, is that money will compensate you for what you have to do to get it. And so we push, and we run, and we juggle faster, more. And the speed at which we live hides the emptiness of many of the things that we're living for. And if we only slow down, or if we are forced to slow down, perish the thought, in those moments we realize that life at this speed is not satisfying. You can never earn enough. Have you noticed that? Liaisons are never sexy enough, food is never tasty enough, clothes are never fashionable enough, houses are never big enough, relationships are never romantic enough, life is never full enough. This is because speed blurs life. I'm not suggesting that we all ought to become hippies. My views on armpit hair are well known. All I'm suggesting is that the ancient wisdom of the Bible says that we need to have time. Because life works best when we have time. We need to give time to ourselves, and I use that turn of phrase deliberately because no one else is going to give it to us. We need to give it to us. We need to enjoy life. Our world is filled with many beautiful things and many beautiful people. We have friends, we have family, and it is the wisdom of God and the desire of God and the design of God that we enjoy ourselves. And the more balance we have in our life, the more enjoyment we get out of it. Is it just me, or does steak not taste better at the cottage after a day of doing nothing in particular? Is it just me, or does a gin and tonic not taste far better at the end of the dock with the sun going down than it does on the plane on the way to another meeting? Is it just me, or does a glass of beer not taste all that much better at the end of a long weekend around the fire pit in your garden with your family and friends? Is it just me, or is sex not all that more pleasurable when you've spent a whole day connecting with your partner? Why are these things so? Why does it work like that? It's because God has arranged life in a particular way. And that way involves there being a time for things. In this church, we want to help people become all that God intended them to be. And one of the things that God intended for your life and for my life was happiness. Those of you who have children understand that intention. The thing you want for your child more than anything else is for your child to be happy. Not successful. You don't wish for your child to have the latest car or the biggest house. You wish for your child to be happy. This is what God's wish for us. And in life, it only takes a little adjustment here and there to make a big difference. You still have to take the kids to hockey and pay the bills and all that stuff. There's nothing you can do about a lot of that. But we need to think this week about what adjustments, little adjustments we can make today that will make a large difference over time tomorrow. Let me offer you 3 suggestions. Suggestion number 1. I think we all have room to work better, not harder. There's a nice saying in the Bible. It says, if the axe is dull, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. Which is an ancient way of saying, sharpen it, you idiot. Okay, so you have to work 10 hours a day. If you have to work 10 hours a day, then you have to work 10 hours a day. But you can take your day off. You can make sure you take your vacation time. And during those 10 hours, you can look at what you're doing and see if there's any way in which you can be doing it better. See if there's a way in which you can do the same amount of work without it exacting the same toll that it hitherto has been. If you have to take your children to sports and music and dance, well, that's what you have to do. But do you really have to do all of it? Like, would your children spontaneously combust if you programmed them a little less? In the evening, do you really have to watch so much telly? Could you not find time to go for a walk with your spouse, with your friend? Do something that would enrich your soul rather than take from it? No one else is going to enrich your life for you. You have to do it. Can you work smarter in life? Can you do life better? Suggestion number 2, lower your expectations. Turn to your wife and tell her this. Do you know what I think? I think that one of the biggest causes of stress in our lives is that we all expect too much. One day I'm going to write a book called The Power of Negative Thinking. I'm serious. In our culture, we're led to believe that we can be happy and healthy and we can have it all, and if we only put our mind to it, we can get whatever we want, and our soap operas and our magazines and our malls feed us an image of life that is unattainable and unsustainable. Sociologists call this the aspiration gap. This is a fact, if you aspire up in life, up to a home you could never afford, up to a figure that you need a time machine to achieve, up to a lifestyle that would bankrupt you, it creates a dissatisfaction somewhere inside you. And you try and feed that dissatisfaction by getting more and doing more and running more, and it just creates stress in our lives. I'm telling you, you'll be happier if you aspire down. No, I'm being serious. You compare yourself to... I was just talking with a guy before church today who told me that over Christmas he's going down to South America to work with some poor people. And I just know that guy's going to have a far happier Christmas than we are. Because when you spend time hanging out with people who have nothing and who have real, deep problems, I'm not saying it makes you feel good, but I'm not suggesting we should find a poor person and say, "Can I be your friend because you make me feel better about me?" I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that if we aspire down, it helps us realize that life is not as bad as we sometimes imagine it to be, and that many of our concerns are actually trivial and don't matter, and that maybe we don't need some of the things that we're killing ourselves so efficiently to get. It says in the Bible that godliness with contentment is great gain. Well, we think that gain is great gain. The Bible says that the best people, are the people who are content with what they've got. Do you know the people I admire the most and I'm most jealous of? They're the people who are not like me. I've always been a bit driven. Always trying to do more and achieve more and all that. In some ways, the upward surge of man depends on people being dissatisfied and wanting more and achieving more. I get that. But the people I truly admire, the people who I truly want to be like, are the people who can look at their life and just, whatever their life is like, and just, I don't need it because I've got it. I don't need to prove anything to anyone because I'm happy in my own skin. This is what we are to aspire to, the Bible says. Contentment with godliness is gain. Gain is not gain. Third suggestion I would make. For goodness sake, have a friend. It helps when we talk. In the pressures of modern life and the hassle of living, we all need friends. This is the wisdom of the Bible. If a man falls down, another can help him up, but pity the man who, when he falls down, has no one to help him up. Do you remember when you went through something, how much it helped you to have a friend? How much it helped you to have someone to talk to? Have a friend. Be a friend. It makes life far better. So, there you go. Any questions on any of that stuff before we go? Anything at all? You're scared to put your arm up in case it's hairy, aren't you? I see. I understand. Thank you. Okay. I think next week we're talking about the difference between men and women. And the title of next week's talk is called Women Are Weird. So it'll be good. It'll be good. Let me pray and then we'll go. Our Father in heaven and lover of our souls, we bow our frantic heads before you and ask that you will give us the happiness of being content in our own skin, that you will give us the deep pleasure of finding enjoyment in the life we already have. And as we work and as we aspire and as we dream for the future, that we ask that we will not dream in such a way that defers the enjoyment of life into the future. Help us to work smarter this week. Help us to appreciate what we've already got. Help us to have friends and be friends. And help us, we ask, for the rest of this day, to know deep down inside of us your peace, your calm, your mercy, your forgiveness, your deep embrace of heaven, assuring us that we're okay and it's going to be okay. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for coming. God bless you. See you next Sunday.